Turn around! You're under arrest!
I am a lieutenant commander. This is a mistake.
Hands behind your back, now!
You're making a serious error, Deputy.
We'll sort that out at the station.
I'm not resisting.
Good. Stay that way. Cuffs secure.
The fluorescent lights of the Shell station on State Route 60 hummed with the quiet electric indifference of a Friday night in Riverside County. It was late, nearly 11 p.m., and the desert air was beginning to cool, settling over the asphalt like a thin blanket. For most people, this gas station was just a waypoint, a place to refuel and grab a coffee before disappearing back onto the highway. But for Lieutenant Commander Marcus Thorne, it was the last stop before home. Thorne was exhausted. He had spent the last 6 hours driving north from San Diego, his mind still lingering in the heavy silence of a memorial chapel. He had buried a friend that morning, another brother lost not to enemy fire, but to the cruel mathematics of a training accident. Thorne was 39 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of a man twice that age. He wore his Navy service dress blues not out of vanity, but out of duty. He had worn them to honor the dead, and he hadn't had the energy to change before getting in the car. He stood by his silver Toyota Camry, watching the numbers tick up on the gas pump, the stiff collar of his dress shirt pressed against his neck, a reminder of the discipline that had defined his last 17 years. On his chest, rows of ribbons caught the harsh overhead light, a kaleidoscope of color that told a story of violence, survival, and sacrifice. The Navy Cross, the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star with a V for valor. To the uninitiated, they were just colorful strips of fabric. To those who knew, they were receipts for a soul sold to the service of the nation. Thorne wasn't thinking about his medals. He was thinking about his mother's peach cobbler. He was thinking about sleeping in a bed that didn't move. He was thinking about peace. But peace was not waiting for him in Riverside. What was waiting for him was Deputy Sheriff Kyle Braddock. Braddock was 2 miles away when the call came in. He was a 10-year veteran of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, a man who patrolled his sector with the swagger of someone who believed the law was something he embodied, not something he served. Braddock was 35, broad-shouldered, and deeply, dangerously confident in his own instincts. Those instincts had been wrong before, 12 times in fact. 12 times in the last decade, citizens had filed formal complaints against Deputy Braddock. A Hispanic family harassed at a park for playing music too loud. A black teenager detained for walking in a neighborhood where Braddock thought he didn't belong. An Asian photographer questioned aggressively for taking pictures of a bridge. Each time the department had investigated. Each time they had found insufficient evidence or recommended additional training. Braddock had learned a lesson from these incidents, but it wasn't the one the department intended. He learned that he was untouchable. He learned that his gut feeling was enough to justify a stop, and that the badge on his chest was a shield that deflected all scrutiny. So when the radio crackled to life with a report of a suspicious subject at the Shell station, Braddock didn't hesitate. The caller, an anonymous voice from a nearby apartment complex, had reported a black male in a costume acting strangely. "He looks like he's pretending to be military," the caller had said. "It just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right." That was all Braddock needed. He spun his cruiser around, tires chirping on the pavement, and accelerated toward the gas station. He didn't know he was driving toward the end of his career. He didn't know he was about to collide with a force far greater than his own arrogance. Before we dive into the confrontation that would shake the foundations of the Sheriff's Department, I want to welcome you to the channel. We tell stories here about the moments when the system fails and how justice finds a way to break through. If you're watching from the US or anywhere else in the world, let me know in the comments. And if you believe that no one should be above the law, especially those sworn to enforce it, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this unfolds. Thorne had just finished pumping gas. He replaced the nozzle, the metallic clank echoing in the quiet station. He was reaching for his receipt when the blue and red lights washed over him. He didn't panic. Panic was something he had trained out of his system years ago in the freezing surf of Coronado. He simply turned, his movements deliberate and calm, to see the patrol car screech to a halt 10 feet away. Deputy Braddock exited the vehicle before it had even fully settled on its suspension. He didn't walk. He marched. His hand was already resting on the grip of his pistol, a subtle, unspoken threat. "Step away from the vehicle!" Braddock barked. His voice was loud, projected to intimidate. Thorne slowly moved away from the gas pump, keeping his hands visible. He knew the drill. He knew that any sudden movement could be misinterpreted by an edgy cop. "Officer, can I help you?" Thorne asked. His voice was steady, the baritone rumble of a man used to giving orders, not just taking them. Braddock stopped 5 feet away. He looked Thorne up and down, his eyes narrowing as he took in the pristine uniform, the gold stripes on the sleeves, the heavy rack of medals. He didn't see a lieutenant commander. He saw a fraud. "What is this?" Braddock asked, gesturing vaguely at Thorne's chest. "Halloween came early." Thorne blinked. The insult was so casual, so absurd, that it took a moment to register. "Excuse me, Deputy. This is my service dress blue uniform. I am an active duty naval officer." "Yeah, right," Braddock sneered. "And I'm the Admiral of the Fleet. You know stolen valor is a federal crime, right? Walking around in a costume disrespecting real soldiers." Thorne felt a cold spike of anger in his chest, but he pushed it down. He channeled the discipline of 1,000 inspections, 100 firefights. "Deputy, I assure you this is not a costume. I am Lieutenant Commander Marcus Thorne, United States Navy. I am assigned to SEAL Team 5. I just came from a funeral." "SEAL Team 5, Braddock repeated, mocking him. "Sure, you got an ID for that costume?" "It is in my jacket pocket," Thorne said, moving his hand slowly toward his chest. "I'm going to reach for it now." "Keep your hands where I can see them," Braddock shouted, stepping closer. "Don't reach for anything until I tell you." Thorne froze. He held his hands up, palms open. "You asked for my ID, Deputy. I cannot show it to you if I cannot reach for it." "I'll tell you when to reach," Braddock said. He was enjoying this. He was in control. He looked around the gas station, noting the few other patrons watching. He wanted them to see this. He wanted them to see him taking down a fraud. "Okay," Braddock said after a long, tense pause. Slowly. "2 fingers. Pull it out." Thorne reached into his inner pocket and withdrew his common access card, the standard issue military ID. He held it out. Braddock snatched it from his hand. He glanced at it for barely a second before scoffing. "This is fake," Braddock said. "I can buy one of these on the internet for $20. "That is a Department of Defense common access card," Thorne said, his voice hardening. "It has an embedded chip. It has a hologram. It is federal property. If you scan it, it will verify my identity immediately." "I don't need to scan it," Braddock said. "I know a fake when I see one. And looking at you, buddy, nothing about this adds up." There it was. The quiet part said out loud. "Looking at you." Thorne knew exactly what Braddock meant. He didn't fit the deputy's mental image of a Navy SEAL officer. He didn't fit the image of a hero. "Deputy," Thorne said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly quiet, "you are making a mistake, a career-ending mistake. I am asking you to call your supervisor. I am asking you to verify that ID properly." "I don't need a supervisor to handle a fraud," Braddock spat. "Take off the jacket." Thorne stared at him. "Excuse me." "I said take off the jacket," Braddock repeated. "You're not authorized to wear it. It's evidence. Strip it off. Now." "I will not," Thorne said. "This is a uniform of the United States Navy. I am an officer. I will not strip in a gas station parking lot because you refuse to do your job." "You're resisting a lawful order," Braddock said, reaching for his handcuffs. "That's it. Turn around." "I am not resisting," Thorne said, standing his ground. "I am refusing an unlawful order." "There is a difference." "Turn around," Braddock yelled, lunging forward. He grabbed Thorne's arm and spun him around. Thorne could have stopped him. He knew 14 different ways to incapacitate a man from this distance. He could have broken Braddock's wrist before the deputy even realized what was happening, but he didn't. He knew that if he fought back physically, he would lose the war. The narrative would shift. He would become the violent suspect. So he let Braddock twist his arm behind his back. He let the deputy slam him against the trunk of his Camry. He felt the cold steel of the handcuffs bite into his wrists. "You're under arrest for impersonating a military officer and resisting arrest," Braddock announced, panting slightly from the exertion. Thorne rested his forehead against the cool metal of his car. He closed his eyes. "Deputy," Thorne whispered, "you have no idea what you have just done." The back of the patrol car smelled of stale sweat and disinfectant. Thorne sat awkwardly, his hands cuffed behind him, his dress coat bunching up uncomfortably. He watched the familiar streets of Riverside pass by through the wire mesh of the window. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating. He was running through the chain of command in his head. Who would be on duty at the base? Who was the JAG officer on call? Braddock drove in silence, a smug look on his face. He thought he had just bagged a trophy. He thought he was going to be the hero of the morning briefing. When they arrived at the Riverside County Sheriff's Station, Braddock pulled into the Sallyport with a flourish. He hauled Thorne out of the car and marched him into the booking area. The booking sergeant, a weary veteran named Luis Martinez, looked up from his computer. His eyes widened as he saw the prisoner. "Braddock," Martinez said, standing up slowly. What do we have here?" "Stolen valor," Braddock announced proudly. "Caught him at the Shell station on 60. fake uniform, fake ID, the whole 9 yards. Martinez walked around the desk. He had served in the Marines for 6 years before joining the department. He knew uniforms. He knew regulations. He looked at Thorne. He looked at the ribbons. He saw the Navy Cross at the top of the stack. He saw the way the medals were mounted, perfectly aligned, spaced with microscopic precision. He saw the shine on the shoes. Then he looked at Thorne's face. He saw the stoic, quiet rage of a man who knew exactly who he was. "Sir," Martinez said to Thorne, ignoring Braddock. "What is your name?" "Lieutenant Commander Marcus Thorne, United States Navy." Thorne replied, "Service number 884291102. I am the executive officer of SEAL Team 5. Martinez felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to Braddock. "Did you run his ID?" Martinez asked. "I didn't need to," Braddock said. "It's obviously fake." "Give it to me," Martinez ordered. Braddock handed over the CAC card. Martinez took it to his terminal. He slid it into the reader. The screen flashed green. Subject verified. Thorne, Marcus A. Rank, 04, LT Commander. Status, active duty clearance, top secret/SE. Martinez stared at the screen. His mouth went dry. He looked at the alert section. Warning, subject is special warfare personnel. Report any detention immediately to Naval Command. Martinez turned slowly to Braddock. "You idiot," Martinez whispered. "What?" Braddock asked, his smile faltering. "He's real, Braddock. He's real. You just arrested an active duty SEAL commander." Braddock blinked. "No, that's impossible. Look at him." "I am looking at him," Martinez shouted. "And I'm looking at the federal database that says you just committed a felony. Uncuff him. Now." I... Braddock stammered. "Do it," Martinez roared. Braddock fumbled for his keys. He walked over to Thorne, his hands shaking. He unlocked the cuffs. Thorne rubbed his wrists. He didn't look at Braddock. He looked at Martinez. "Sergeant," Thorne said calmly, "I need a phone. I need to call my commanding officer, and then I need to call the Judge Advocate General." "Yes, sir," Martinez said. "Right away, sir. Come with me. We'll get you out of here." As Thorne followed Martinez into the office, he paused and looked back at Braddock. The deputy was standing alone in the middle of the booking room, the color draining from his face, looking suddenly very small and very young. "I told you," Thorne said softly. The phone call Thorne made from the sergeant's office was short. It lasted less than 3 minutes, but the shockwaves it generated would be felt for years. Captain James Reynolds, the commanding officer of SEAL Team 5, was asleep when his phone rang at 1:15 a.m. He listened to Thorne's report in silence. When Thorne finished, Reynolds asked one question. "Are you hurt, Marcus?" "Just my wrists, sir, and my pride." "Stay put," Reynolds said. "I'm making calls. Do not speak to anyone else until JAG arrives." Reynolds hung up and dialed the number for the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS. Then he called the Pentagon. By 2 a.m., the phone in Sheriff Bill Donovan's bedroom was ringing. Donovan listened to the voice on the other end of the line. It was an admiral, a 2-star admiral, calling him at home in the middle of the night. "Sheriff," the admiral said, his voice like grinding stones, "I have just been informed that your department has arrested one of my officers, a man with a Navy Cross, a man who has saved more American lives than you have deputies. I want to know why." Donovan didn't have an answer. He threw on his clothes and drove to the station at 90 miles an hour. When he arrived, the scene was chaotic. 2 men in dark suits, NCIS agents, were already there, interviewing Martinez. Braddock was sitting in a corner, stripped of his gun belt, looking like a ghost. Thorne was sitting in the sheriff's office, drinking a cup of coffee. He was still in his uniform, though it was wrinkled now. Donovan walked in. He took off his hat. "Commander Thorne," Donovan said, I am mortified. There are no words." "Sheriff," Thorne said, standing up, "this isn't about words. It's about a pattern. Your deputy didn't just make a mistake. He made a choice. He decided I was a criminal because of how I looked, and I know I'm not the first one." Thorne was right. The investigation that followed was swift and brutal. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division got involved. They pulled Braddock's file. They found the 12 previous complaints. They found the pattern that the department had ignored for a decade. They found the text messages on Braddock's phone. Messages where he bragged to friends about cleaning up the streets and used slurs that would make a sailor blush. The trial of Deputy Kyle Braddock was not a quiet affair. It was national news. The prosecutor, a sharp federal attorney named Sarah Jenkins, laid out the case with surgical precision. She called Thorne to the stand. He walked in wearing the same service dress blue uniform, immaculate once again. He testified about the arrest. He testified about the humiliation. But the most damning evidence wasn't Thorne's testimony. It was the video. The gas station security camera had captured everything. The jury watched in silence as Braddock marched up to Thorne. They watched the aggressive posturing. They watched Thorne's calm compliance. They watched the arrest. Braddock's defense attorney tried to argue that it was an honest mistake, a fog of war moment. Fog of war? Jenkins countered in her closing argument. There was no war at that gas station. There was a man pumping gas and a bully with a badge. Deputy Braddock didn't make a mistake. He made an assumption. And in this country, we do not arrest people based on assumptions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Kyle Braddock guilty of deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, and assault. Because of the federal enhancements, the fact that he had targeted a service member, the fact that he was armed, the fact that it was a hate crime, the judge didn't show mercy. Kyle Braddock was sentenced to 58 years in federal prison. We are reaching the end of this story, but before the final scene, I want to ask you something. We talk a lot about bad apples in policing, but what about the orchard? Braddock had 12 complaints, 12 red flags waving in the wind. Why did it take a Navy SEAL to finally stop him? What happens to the people who aren't war heroes? What happens to the teenager, the photographer, the family at the park? If you think the system needs to change, let me know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe. It helps us keep telling these stories. It is 6 months later. Marcus Thorne is standing in his mother's kitchen. The smell of peach cobbler fills the air, sweet and warm. He is not in uniform today. He is wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He looks younger, lighter. His mother, a formidable woman named Clara, puts a plate in front of him. "Eat," she says. "You look thin." Thorne smiles. He picks up his fork. "I'm okay, Mama," he says. "I know you are," she says. "You're a thorn. We don't break." She sits down across from him. "I saw the news," she says quietly, "about the sheriff." Sheriff Donovan had resigned 2 weeks after the trial. The department was under a federal consent decree, forced to overhaul its hiring and disciplinary practices. Every single one of Braddock's old arrests was being reviewed. "Yeah," Thorne says, "justice works sometimes." "Only when good men make it work," Clara says. Thorne looks out the window. He thinks about Braddock sitting in a cell. He doesn't feel joy. He doesn't feel triumph. He feels relief. Relief that Braddock can't hurt anyone else. But he also feels a lingering sadness. He knows that for every Braddock who gets caught, there are others out there. He knows that the uniform he wears protects him, but it doesn't protect everyone. He takes a bite of the cobbler. It tastes like home. "Mama," he says, "I think I'm going to retire next year." Clara smiles. "Good. I need someone to help me with the garden." Thorne laughs. It is a real laugh, deep and genuine. He had fought for his country. He had fought for his reputation. Now he was ready to fight for his tomatoes. And as the sun sets over Riverside, casting long shadows across the desert, Marcus Thorne finally finds the peace he was looking for at that gas station. The system is flawed. It is broken in places we try not to look at. But sometimes, when the light hits it just right, we can see the cracks. And if we are brave enough, we can fix them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.